The swordsman takes place during the Joseon dynasty, which was led by a king named Wang Yijun. That night, King Wang Yi had to get away from the rebels who wanted to overthrow his throne, along with his baby girl and a bodyguard. The rebels were a group of royal officials who had previously provided King Wang Yi with support. However, when he failed to address the conflict between the Ming and Qing dynasties, they made the decision to rebel. King Wang Yi himself made the decision to remain neutral because the Joseon people would face the threat of being colonized by the infamous Qing dynasty if he publicly supported the Ming dynasty. In the meantime, the Joseon dynasty would be regarded as a traitor to the Ming dynasty if King Wang Yi supported the Qing dynasty, which had assisted in protecting the Joseon dynasty from attacks by Japanese imperial forces several years earlier. As a result, he was unable to express himself clearly and chose to remain neutral when addressing the conflict between the Ming and Qing dynasties. Sadly, the decision of King Wang Yi not to support the Ming dynasty, which had been assisting the Joseon kingdom all along, disappointed a number of high-ranking Joseon kingdom officials. In order to establish a new government that backed the Ming dynasty, some royal officials agreed to launch a rebellion and remove King Wang Yi from his throne. Jiam Sa-bok, King Wang Yi's sole male bodyguard, attempted to shield him and his infant from the rebels' pursuit that night. Sa-bok is one of the best swordsmen in the kingdom and the most affluent member of the guard of the Gwangi royal family. Sa-bok, an honorable swordsman, will face Min Seung-ho, another royal swordsman, in a duel at that time. It would appear that Seung-ho is still hesitant to start a rebellion because King Gwangi is a wise and good king. In any case, he joined the disobedience because of the Lord's choice not to help the Ming line and being incited by another authority named Li Muk-yo. Sa-bok, who wants to protect the king, and Seung-ho, who rebelled, start the duel. The two best swordsmen are engaged in a fierce battle, but Sa-bok's sword suddenly breaks and hits his eyes, putting him in a difficult position. When he saw this, King Wang Yi decided to give in to the rebels and was forced to give the rebel officials his throne as king of Joseon. King Wang Yi, on the other hand, handed Sa-bok a torn piece of his robe and asked him to look after his newborn daughter before sending him away into exile. When Sa-bok goes on his way with the king's daughter, he thinks back to the first time he met him. Around then, Sa-bok battled against a few jail watches from the king line alone after he figured out how to escape from the king tradition prison. Sa-bok has the potential to be the best swordsman, as Seung-ho and King Wang Yi, a swordsman, realize. Consequently, King Wang Yi brought him to the kingdom to receive specialized swordsman training and appointed him as the royal family's bodyguard. Sa-bok is determined to always be loyal to the king and protect the royal family because he is so appreciative of King Wang Yi's goodness. Sa-bok takes care of King Wang Yi's daughter 18 years after the royal rebellion and lives in the mountains so that the royal Joseon troops cannot locate them. Even as he cared for the king's daughter as if she were his own, he changed his name to Tae-yul and gave her the name Tae-ok. They hunt and sell the skins of their prey to the nearby market every day to make ends meet. Tae-yul enjoys his peacetime relationship with Tae-ok and feels at ease away from war. However, Tae-yul's eyesight began to deteriorate on a daily basis and he was close to losing his sight. In order to ensure that her father would not go blind, Tae-ok, who was concerned, contacted a male doctor. The doctor advises them to treat Tae-yul's eyes right away with herbal medicine, which can only be found at the village trading post. Tae-yul and Tae-ok left the mountain the following day and went to the village to the trading post to get the herbal medicine they needed. The Joseon kingdom was led at this point by a king named Inju to take over for King Wang Yi, who had been forced out of his position. King Inju met that day with high-ranking officials like Seung-ho and Muk-yo to talk about a way to stop the cruel Qing dynasty from colonizing the Joseon kingdom's borders and making the Joseon people slaves. Since King Inju supported the Ming dynasty and fired officials who disagreed with his decision, the Qing dynasty began to colonize. The Ming dynasty began colonizing the Joseon kingdom and kidnapping Joseon women as slaves as a form of protest. The officials of the Joseon royal family were worried, but they were unable to do much because the Qing dynasty demanded a large ransom to free the Joseon people who had been enslaved. King Inju and other high officials were also concerned that their wives and children would become slaves if this condition persisted. Then, Muk-yo offered to negotiate with Guratai, the slave post's leader. The following day, Seung-ho plans to resign as a royal official because he feels responsible for the Joseon people's suffering as a result of their overthrow of King Gwangi. The scene shifts back to Tae-ok and Tae-yul, who have arrived at the village and have passed a market that sells a variety of beads and other goods, which piques Tae-ok's interest. They suddenly saw a husband in the middle of the market who wanted to free his wife, who was about to be made a slave by the henchmen of the Ming dynasty. In any case, in light of the fact that the rates for liberating slaves were expanding, the spouse could ask for his significant other to be delivered. All of that made Tae-ok feel sorry for him and wanted to help him, but Tae-yul stopped her right away and told her not to get involved. The Joseon Kingdom's soldiers arrived to deal with the chaos, but when they saw the 3 Ming dynasty slave overseers, they were powerless and decided to leave. Mukyo, on the other hand, meets with the slave post leader Guratai. Guratai is a cousin of the emperor of the very corrupt King dynasty and is known as one of the most ruthless swordsmen. Seung-ho, who was also present at the meeting, was so enraged by Guratai's numerous insults to the Joseon Kingdom that he stomped his sword. Guratai thought he was a great swordsman when he saw Seung-ho holding the sword, so he wanted to see how well Seung-ho could fight. Seung-ho and Hwasum, one of Guratai's executioners, engaged in a fight a split second later. Hwasum appeared ambitious and arrogant, believing he was the best swordsman, while Seung-ho swung his sword precisely and gave the impression of being serious. Seung-ho, on the other hand, prevailed in the sword fight with ease and precision. Tae-yul and Tae-ok, on the other hand, have arrived at the trading post, where they meet Hwasien, the business owner. Unfortunately, herbal medicines cost a lot, and because they are very rare, you have to get them through an inspection by local officials. Tae-ok tried to offer the hunted skin she had prepared earlier when she heard this, but Hwasien again turned it down because the skin's value was too high compared to the herbal medicine they were selling. Guratai and his men soon arrived at the location to rest for a while. Tae-yul gives Tae-ok a bracelet she bought at the village market after leaving the trading post. They then went to a food stand owned by a woman who had breastfed Tae-ok when he was a baby. Mukyo, on the other hand, goes to Hwasien to ask for a girl who can help his mother out by working. Hearing this, she abruptly considers Tae-yul right and expects to extend to her this employment opportunity and bring in sufficient cash to purchase the uncommon homegrown medication they need. Tae-yul went to the home of a sword maker who frequently made swords for the royal family in the early hours of the morning. He wants to make sure that the sword maker is still alive so that he can go there one day when he needs a sword. Hwasien meets Tae-ok at a food stall at the same time and offers her the job that Mukyo previously offered. Tae-ok tells Mukyo that he wants to adopt her as his adopted daughter after they meet. She will later acquire the same opulent facilities as other official families, providing her with sufficient funds to purchase herbal remedies for her father. Tae-ok accepted Mukyo's offer right away when she heard it because she wanted to help her father get the best medical care and a better life. Seung-ho saw Tae-ok's red cloth, which was very similar to the cloth that King Gwangi had given him when he went to Mukyo's house the following day. After that, Seung-ho learns from Mukyo that he plans to adopt her as his adopted daughter so that he can take care of his mother. When Tae-yul gets back to the restaurant, the owner tells him that Tae-ok has gone with the trading post owner, so he rushes to the trading post right away. At the same time, 3 of Guratai's men had planned to rape the servant girls at the trading post, causing a commotion there. Seeing the circumstance, Hwasien and her protectors had to stand up to the 3 killers and battle against them. Tae-ok came and slammed Hwasien with a stone, injuring the man's face, as one of the executioners was close to killing him. The man became enraged when he saw the wound on his face and planned to attack Tae-yul, but she was able to stop him. Tae-yul initially avoided conflict by bowing and apologizing in response to the man's words. However, the conflict between Hwasum and Tae-yul cannot be avoided when he is coerced into handing over the virgin Tae-ok to them. Although Tae-yul appeared to be superior to Hwasum in their fight, he was able to defeat Hwasum decisively. It turns out that Seung-ho secretly watched their fight so he could find out that Sa-bok and King Gwangi's daughter are still alive. Tae-yul decides that night to reveal her true identity and parents to Tae-ok. When Tae-ok hears this, she still considers Tae-yul to be her father and wants to keep him safe so that he doesn't have to repay all of his kindness so far. She tells him that she will become an official's adopted daughter and work as a nurse to earn enough money to purchase herbal remedies. Tae-yul remains silent when she heard that because her decision was unanimous. He is very sad because he has to let go of the person for whom he has cared a lot. Then again, Seung-ho sees Mukyo and a few different authorities having a mystery meeting and wanting to track down an embraced kid as a substitute for their little girl. This is because the Joseon dynasty was offered by the King dynasty that if the officials handed over their daughters to the King dynasty rulers, they would free some slaves and lower the ransom price. Mukyo had also written a letter of objection to King Inju, urging him to act against the cruel practices of the Qing dynasty. The girl Mukyo was about to adopt yesterday will be given to the Qing dynasty, according to Sun Ho, who secretly listens in on the conversation. The objection letter that Mukyo wanted to send to King Injo was taken by Guratai's men the following day. Subsequent to perusing the letter's items, Guratai felt irate at Mukyo, who had planned to defy the Qing line. Consequently, he arranged exceptional powers to attack Mukyo's home and slaughter all Mukyo's relatives. As Taeyul is making his way home through the forest, he is suddenly attacked by a group of men who are not known to him. The fight then resumes. Taeyul rushed to the trading post as soon as he realized that Taeoke might be in danger after defeating them all successfully. All of Mukyo's servants were murdered when Guratai and his troops arrived at Mukyo's residence in the evening. Guratai then plans to kill Taeoke, whom he believes to be Mukyo's daughter. However, Guratai is informed by a man who was stabbed by Taeoke that she is not Mukyo's biological daughter because he recognizes her. He began to understand Mukyo's cunning as he learned that he had sacrificed another girl to save his own daughter. Guratai decided not to kill Taeoke when Sun Ho showed up and said he wanted to be a swordsman in the Qing dynasty empire. In contrast, Huisam attacks Hua Xian and demands that she tell him where Taeyul is in order to exact his vengeance on him for defeating him. Not long later, Taeyul showed up and went after Huisam fiercely until he passed on. After that, Taeyul scolds Hua Xian for selling his daughter to corrupt officials so they could use her as a slave. Hua Xian, who has no idea what Mukyo is up to, takes him to Mukyo's house to find Taeoke. Taeyul rushed to the headquarters of the swordsman who had become the Qing dynasty's henchman as soon as he saw that everyone in the house had tragically died while he was there. Taeyul killed all of the swordsmen in that area mercilessly out of rage in order to learn where the Qing dynasty's enslaved girls were. Taeyul then travels to the border, where Joseon girls and women are sold as sexual slaves. Mukyo goes to King Inju at the same time to tell him that Guratai has taken his daughter hostage. Mukyo was unable to speak with King Inju because Guratai had already met him when he arrived at the royal palace. The scenes change to Taeyul, who has shown up at the boundary, attempting to find Tae Right, and the one who possesses the food slow down, captured by the fighters. After hearing the shopkeepers scream for assistance, Taeyul heads to a tent. When Taeyul got to the tent, some rude men tried to rape the woman, so he killed all the men there right away. The one camp guard Taeyul hasn't killed outside the tent looks drunk because he slept with the other slave girls. Taeyul threatens the camp guards to free all of the slaves in the tent after killing all of the men there. He only found Taeoke's bell bracelet, which was given to her by one of the female slaves after all the female slaves were freed. The guard at the camp was then instructed to take Taeyul to the location of the girls who would be sold into slavery by the Qing dynasty's rulers. Mukyo plans to attack the Guratai base on the border with the royal army the following day without King Inju's knowledge. In any case, when one of Mukyo's men was arranging, he was out of nowhere gone after with a hand hatchet to his demise, so the battle between Guratai's men and the regal warriors was undeniable. Sadly, Guratai's men fought with rifles, allowing them to easily slaughter the entire royal army from afar. After seeing that all of the troops he had brought were dead, Mukyo, who was still hiding behind, made the decision to leave the area. However, two more of Guratai's men appeared and threatened him with axes before he could leave. At the same time, Taeyul arrives at the location with the assistance of the camp guard, who is stabbed to death by an axe thrown by Guratai's men and dies instantly. Taeyul and Guratai's men engaged in a 2-on-1 battle following the attack. The Qing dynasty troops heard the commotion and began to arrive shortly after, firing at Taeyul in succession. Fortunately, he was able to use the bodies of Guratai's men as shields, so he took advantage of the opportunity to approach them all and launch an attack. After an extremely lengthy and tiring fight, Taeyul at last figured out how to overcome the whole foe armed force until the main enduring killer was scared and escaped from the spot. Mukyo immediately knelt before Taeyul and begged him to save his daughter, who had been kidnapped by Guratai, after realizing that Taeyul was Sa Bak, who had protected King Gwangi. Taeyul replied, Mukyo should not think about anything else and should try to improve the state of the country that he had changed by the betrayal he committed in the past, in a state of weakness and blurred vision. Taeyul limped off after that before finally fainting from exhaustion. When Taeyul awoke from his slumber the following day, he found himself at the trading post, where Hua Xian had treated his eyes with herbal medicine on Mukyo's orders. Taeyul then went to the swordsman he'd met to get a new sword he'd use to beat Guratai. Seung-ho is getting ready to fight Tae-yeol at the same time because Guratai says that he will hurt the people of Joseon. Seung-ho has been waiting for Tae-yeol to fight for their goals when he arrives at Guratai's headquarters the following day. Guratai and his servant girl would relax on the balcony while they watch their fight. Due to their superior sword-fighting abilities, the battle between the Joseon kingdom's best swordsmen was fierce. But Tae-yeol defeats Seung-ho because he is so determined to save Tae-ok and keep his promise to King Gwangi. Guratai invites Tae-yeol to fight somewhere where he can see Tae-ok, who is bound by iron chains, after the fight is over. Due to Guratai's speed, Tae-yeol initially appeared to be unable to defend himself against his attacks. However, Tae-yeol becomes enraged and eager to kill Tae-ok after observing the servant girl of Guratai threatening him with a sword. In order to make sure Tae-ok is safe, Tae-yeol intentionally injures the servant girl who is watching him in the next round. Tae-yeol then began to unleash all of his attacks and fought valiantly to defeat Guratai. He immediately gave Tae-ok a relieved hug after Tae-yeol finally defeated him after a bloody struggle. All slaves were freed after Guratai, the slave post's leader, passed away, and the remaining King Dynasty officials made the decision to leave the Joseon kingdom. The final scene of the movie features Tae-yeol, who has reconciled with his daughter, whom he adores, and leads their lives in tranquility. The lesson to be taken away from this movie is that a nation will only get worse by betraying a legitimate and wise ruler. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it to support the channel.